let's get our other introductions here. We have, of course, the Rasta Rabbi, Alan Peisner, looking a little bit more dressed up. I noticed he's changed his color tones.
Yeah.
He's trying to look a little bit more rosy. Maybe it's part of the fall season that's upon us, or into the harvest season, I guess. But please welcome Barrister Alan Peisner.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here on the Planet Green Tree Show. The color change you noticed is an attempt to coordinate colors with the other Komorn law attorney on the show, McCormick. But I just want to say it's a pleasure to be on this show, the best medical marijuana show from the best medical marijuana firm. Also, I heard a rumor that this firm has got a favorable result on a murder case this week. I hope we'll hear about that.
Yes.
We're going to talk about that a little bit. I think we may dedicate some other kind of videotaping of that when we get our client to come in. But I did want to talk about it. There's some remarkable things about it. But thank you, Alan, for those kind words. We have, of course, someone that contributed greatly and is, as I said to her when I texted her, like, we lawyered the shit out of them. Good work, counsel. I mean, I got a legal story from this murder case. I was going to talk a little bit about it. It's kind of it's long and
I was going to say there was a show that was kind of based upon this murder case, and it was really interesting. A lot of shit came out there, so to follow it up.
Well, we're going to do one of the.
What happened would be quite awesome.
We're going to try to do a little bit of that, a little more, because it is kind of a murder mystery story. We're going to try to piece it all together. But so, to tell the story, it's I think there's so many different variables, but let me try to say it this way. So I had been following Eric Smith, the former prosecutor of Macomb County, on Facebook because I know he was going through a tortured time, and that is being investigated for the slush fund forfeiture that was discovered. And then he had gone on television and tried to defend it while making all these terrible admissions, thinking he did nothing wrong, and did not look good for him. Obviously his office.
That's rare, right?
It's rare, and his office has been raided, his home had been raided. That's not normal, and things were not going well. So I was just kind of curious to see how somebody in that situation was reacting. And I see, and as I'm monitoring his Facebook posts and whatnot, he's basically, proclaiming how tough he is on crime, and the community should feel good, and he's doing all these things to put bad people away, whatever that means. So I read an article that he's talking about, clicked the link, followed it, where he's describing in great detail this homicide that took place that sounds awful. He basically describes how these three young men had somehow hooked up with a fourth guy and pulled over in a parking lot and literally beat him to death, and then left him there to die. That's like the story from that I'm reading Eric Smith quoted about in this news story, and I think to myself first, wow, not one time did he use the word alleged. And then I thought to myself, wow, if any of that's true, those guys are probably screwed, because that sounds terrible.
Well, also, the police chief, when he was making comments about it too, he never said allegedly either.
And then there was a comment about the police chief.
Do you want us to play the video?
Who also made the same statements and also seemingly created facts. And all right, yes, Ellie, I agree with that.
You want us to play the video?
Play the video.
All right.
Okay.
Failed to load. Hold on.
Viewer discretion is advised.
Stand by.
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
We'll do it live.
Do it live.
Oh shit.
Do we have to watch commercials? What
happened?
happened?
All right.
You got it? Queued up?
Do we have sound?
Where'd Steve go?
Whipping up some dessert teas.
Left on a worn roadway to die. Fox News' Amy Lang with more from Komorn.
You can see the
hear
men
that?
fighting. It's just after midnight on the 4th of July. Surveillance video from a business at Mound Road in Chicago captures part of it. And you can see a car leave the scene, leaving 24-year-old Kenneth Klingler badly beaten.
All right, we're gonna have to start it over
Why?
because it's not transmitting the sound.
Sound's coming through.
Oh,
It's just really quiet.
Can you guys hear it?
On the ground. He struggles
guys
to
hear
get
it?
up, then wanders out onto Mound Road and collapses.
I almost hit him in the middle of the road, and lying in the center of the street. He's got blood coming out of his face. He definitely needs an ambulance. He's breathing barely.
A 911 call that leads Warren police here to what they think is a hit and run. But they quickly learn otherwise when they access the surveillance video, see the fight, and see the car involved, this Buick. Detectives say as they were next door looking at the surveillance video, the suspects pulled up here to this gas station, but they were not checking on the victim. Instead, they were looking for their shoes. Police say 23-year-old Christopher Zenfenning, a freelance photographer for WXYZ Channel 7, is also a martial arts expert. Police say he took off his shoes during the fight with Klingler and had returned to the scene with another suspect to pick them up.
The detectives went across the street, confronted them. They made admissions. They were arrested, 2 of them. And then the 3rd suspect was arrested over at the home on the street here in Warren.
Zenfenning now charged with manslaughter along with Christopher Tworowski and Nathan Domagalski. Police say the 3 men had been at a party in Troy where they met the victim, Kenneth Klingler of Auburn Hills. He was down on his luck, police say. The men agreed to let Klingler stay at their house in Warren. But on the way there, Klingler attacked Domagalski in the back seat. That's when Zenfenning pulled the car over and intervened.
They beat him to death. You know, it's a tragedy. I mean, they beat him, 3 of them. I mean, he suffered. He just had no chance. I mean, he had a fractured skull, other injuries that caused his death. It was senseless.
The chief crediting the detectives and the businesses for quickly providing surveillance video that quickly led to the alleged killers.
All right.
Within 3 hours from the time we...
Okay, so I think even though here on the Zoom we couldn't hear that...
Zoom-a-loom!
It was playing live, and what we heard...
We'll do it live.
What we heard was Chief Dwyer making all these comments how the police first thought it was a hit and run. Then they stopped because the suspect showed up at the gas station next door and made a bunch of admissions, and they stopped.
He had to get his shoes.
He had to get his shoes. And that there was a karate chop and, you know, this beat down or whatever. So that's how this case begins. That's the reporting of it. That's kind of the way it was reporting the story. And then of course, as it goes sometimes, we got retained in the case. And, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to explain this, but I think when we blew through all the discovery and whatnot, it was pretty obvious that it did not appear as if the way that the theory of the death occurred was consistent with the injuries, consistent with the video, or consistent with the version of the story told by the defendants, all 3 defendants, when they were subsequently interviewed, interrogated. And it's an interesting charge because while we have a dead body and it's considered a homicide, the charge is a homicide, it was not first degree, second degree, or manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, which is a death. I mean, there's different ways in which you can prove involuntary manslaughter, but the theory here was that a person committed a crime, to wit, a misdemeanor of some kind, that resulted in death. And the classic scenario of how
manslaughter's not a misdemeanor.
They committed a misdemeanor that resulted in somebody's death.
Someone's death. Got it.
The classic example is you slap someone across the face, and they, fall down, hit their head, and die.
Right.
Or slap someone across the face and you break something in their face and they bleed out or something like that. You know what I mean? Whereas they just intended to do the slap and assault and battery, but you're certainly
but for your actions.
But certainly you didn't intend to commit the death, but you intend to commit the incident that could result in, or it's potentially foreseeable, I guess.
Yes.
But that was the theory by which they were driving this, and there was a number of different things that stood out to us that didn't make any sense. First of all, without getting into too much detail, there's a individual, and if I were to explain the story, the victim here, and I don't want to minimize what a tragedy it is, because it really is a huge tragedy, but it was exacerbated for a number of different things. One, it identifies the problems that we have still here in Michigan and across the country, probably the world, at dealing with people with mental health issues.
Amen.
The victim here was a young man who I understand had been estranged from his family, in and out of some, therapy, and not doing well at the time of this incident. It's unequivocal that he was heavily drinking when he arrived at the location that he did, where he first interacted with my clients. And what happened was he came to a party after drinking all day and ended up at this party. And my client and his two friends had been there. And the victim was real despondent. He was depressed outside, not wanting to interact with everyone. And the person whose party was, was asking him to come in and hang out and whatever. And when the party was breaking up, the victim had nowhere to go, nowhere to stay. And as it's kind of reported, the three, my client and the two friends, were asked if they would allow this guy to sleep on their couch, to which they said, okay. It's sad that someone would need to try to find a couch to sleep on in that situation. Yeah. Again, one of the bigger tragedies, but they said okay, and they started driving to the house for that purpose. And
in early 20s, I mean, that's, not uncommon.
That's true. Ecology, right?
Yeah, that is,
Era, right. But nevertheless, on the way there, maybe the combination of the alcohol, something that someone had said or whatnot, the victim got argumentative and started hitting people in the car, kind of outside of his passive demeanor that he had exhibited before. If you saw in the picture, the three gentlemen that were put up on their booking pictures, the one in the middle had a slash across his nose. That was my client. He actually broke his nose from this incident. And they pulled over into this parking lot with the attempt to try to pull this person out of the car so they could go about their business. And what they're showing, the fighting taking place in the parking lot, was because they were trying to get him out of the car. And when they did and tried to get back into the car, the victim would go and grab one of the three individuals. It turned into this Three Stooges episode of going in one door, grabbing the person's leg, another person coming out, grabbing his leg, back and forth, and he could not get free. Now, they released that video, which shows a car pulling out, and then they say that he was beaten to death and then walked over to this point in the middle of Mound Road and expired, where he fell face down.
Yeah.
And
that's what they say.
That's what they say, and they say that the death was caused by the incident that took place in the parking lot. Now, what's really tragic about this reporting, the way that detective here tells this falsity of wanting to beat them to death, but in fact, in the video, if it was played in its entirety, you see the victim expire into lane 3 of the 4 lanes of Mound Road. 1, 2, 3, and 4. He's laying in 3, and you see a car go by in lane 4. You see a car go by in lane 2. See a car go by in lane 4. See a car go by in lane 2. And you see a car go by in lane 4, 3, and 2. He is laying in lane 3. You see car in lane 3 bump when they go over where his body is. He was hit and killed by a car. Worse yet, one of the weird is the only way to describe it. As being a lawyer in this case, part of the discovery is examining the autopsy photos, and that's the kind of thing that once you see it the first time, you can't ever really forget it. And there's a damage to the brain, to the skull, that just from without a medical training, you'd think that that's not the type of injury that would come about from someone getting hit in the head, or if that was the allegation, or falling down to the pavement. Furthermore, there was like a squished grape indent on the pavement. There was squished, like, blood splatter near his head.
So clearly a traumatic event happened in the middle of Mound Road.
Right. And what had happened was this. After the autopsy, and with all the information, quote unquote, that was necessary as provided by the police, the medical examiner made a conclusion that the cause of death was head trauma. Blunt head trauma.
Imagine that.
Okay?
Imagine that.
From the fight.
Oh, from the fight.
Right.
Oh.
And
well, they.
And
I'm
at some
sure
point,
they just didn't have all the information.
At some point in time later
this
on,
is a lot more damaging than a car tire.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, the car tire's made of rubber, Jamie.
No, okay, but the what happened is something that I don't think it's not the norm. the medical examiner redid his report and made the conclusion that the cause of death was unknown or indeterminate. Couldn't say it was from natural causes. Couldn't say it was from a car accident. Couldn't say it was from a beating.
And it bears repeating that the victim was highly intoxicated this entire time. So multiple elements.
Multiple elements are taking place there. But the point is that at this point in time, and the reason why he changed his opinion was because he didn't have the videotape.
No.
And what's kind of important in the case was this concept of this. You can shoot a person can be shot in the heart, and they can continue to walk for a certain period of time. Kind of I'm not going to use the example of the chicken getting his head cut off, but they get shot in the heart, they bleed out. So many seconds till the heart bleeds out, and they can no longer get blood to the brain.
Right.
As opposed to if you get shot in the brain, in your white matter of your brain, it eliminates any of your ability to function, and you fall down. So the type of damage the medical examiner concluded to the brain, and the damage, and seeing the white matter in the autopsy photos that had been gotten into, led him to believe that this was an injury that was more akin to being shot in the brain and dropping down.
Yep.
Therefore, because this injury that killed him was like that he couldn't walk, it happened there on the road. It didn't happen in the parking lot. Otherwise,
impossible.
He would not have been able to walk the distance before he fell down with the white matter being so badly damaged. Nevertheless, the prosecutor still continued with the preliminary exam.
The Macomb County prosecutor.
Macomb County prosecutor continued with the exam. Eric Smith did not prosecute it. He was outspoken about it. The police chief of Warren was outspoken about it, and someone in the homicide unit was assigned to it and prosecuted it like it was an important case to them and one that they believed was justified.